So you guys may or may not know I've been working on a new decentralized social media app for almost 2 years now. But the problem has been I didn't know how to jumpstart the users for it. So my original thought was to make it a blockchain app that would save the data to the chain, but my problem was who would even want to use that? Who even cares? Then I thought, well, what if I made it part of Mastodon, so it's part of some other decentralized network, and then make putting it on the blockchain optional? Then I ran into AT protocol or Atmosphere protocol, and that's actually what Blue Sky runs on. So I figured, why don't I just look at all of the protocols and figure out which one would work best for my app? So there are actually a ton of decentralized social media protocols, surprisingly. So I looked through all of these and realized that there are only three that anyone actually uses, and that's Mastodon, Atmosphere, that's the Blue Sky one, and Nostr. So a little history, ActivityPub was actually started back with Facebook when they thought they were going to be open, but we all know that didn't turn out very well and it turned into a walled garden. AT Protocol and Nostr were both started by Jack Dorsey. Now, and he's the one who started Twitter, so he's just a serial social media starter. But he left Blue Sky, so he's no longer on the board of Blue Sky, and decided to donate a bunch of money to Nostr. So now Jack Dorsey supports Nostr and X, but he really likes Nostr. And I do too, and I'll get to why. After doing a deep dive on these three protocols, I immediately ruled out ActivityPub. The problem with Mastodon and ActivityPub is that it's server-based. That is, you don't own your data. The server does. And if you want to migrate to a different server, you need to get all your data and change your identity because there are no independent identities. Your identity is based on the server that your data and that your user was created on. So you're essentially in a totalitarian government of whatever server that you originally joined. Also, there's no independent feed system, so you couldn't just say I want to get a feed from all these different places and then have some other third party come along and make a cool feed for you. Another thing is you can't pick and choose which parts of the protocol you want to use. They have it so your entire social graph has to be public. I don't think that is right. I think your social graph, who you follow, what you like, I think that should actually be private. Now the AT protocol and Nostr are actually very similar. So you have an independent ID system that's based on a private key, kind of like a blockchain, but neither of these tell you have to use that. But you have a private key which you sign all of your data, and then that data gets sent around the world and everybody knows it's you because of your private key. And then if you go join a different server, you can bring your private key to that server and you can just start creating messages on that server, and now you live on that server and you have all the same data. You could pull all your data over to your new server, and then there's these independent things called relayers, and the relayers are the ones responsible for sending the messages all over the world or for people to look for new messages. They would be on all those decentralized relays. There's also the idea of an independent feed system. So third parties could create feeds and then you can go look for whichever feed you want and essentially have a free market for feeds. And that's all very new to Blue Sky, so that's still being organized. The problem with Blue Sky is probably, and it's not a huge problem, that the development is more centralized. So it is one organization that is sort of dictating how all of this is set up, and they have some really strict rules for how it can be expanded on. So the type of messages or posts that you create have these special lexicon or NSIDs, they're called, which are you're creating a new type. And that's where your data lives. That's as much as you can change. You can't change more meaningful parts of the protocol. The rest of that is dictated to you, and it isn't really community driven. So there's a central enough portion of the AT protocol that it's a little bit scary to use because you do feel like you're playing in somebody else's sandbox. Also, I'm just not a huge fan of this syntax in general. Now, Nostr is really easy, and it's based on these events. So every post that you send out has this really simple JSON data, which is, the easiest way to send and receive data is in JSON format. It's these simple key value pairs, and everything is based on these events that you send out. And Nostr also has relayers. So it's a relay system and a poster system, and then the same thing with the signature, and you have your own identity that you can create, and then you can take it from any client to any client. And what's more interesting about Nostr, besides from its flexibility, because you can also create all kinds of different types for this, and it's a little bit more flexible than Blue Sky. But what's even more interesting is that in the Nostr environment, there are a ton of clients and tools. So it's not just one blue sky who is sort of suspiciously dominating the entire field. There's a bunch of clients that all have relatively a more dispersed amount of users. They also have something called the Noster Improvement Protocol system, which can remind you of the Bitcoin Improvement Protocol, the BIPs or EIPs, the Ethereum Improvement Protocol. And that allows the community to sort of have a bigger say in the direction of Noster. And I think that's really cool because it's a community-driven effort. So by joining into Noster protocol, it will actually allow me to jumpstart the user base of my app, which was the biggest problem that I was facing and what kind of stalled me out. How do you get your initial users or content for an app that you just, especially a social media app that you just start? People are going to log in, it's just going to be an empty app. So initially, when people make an ID in my app, it's going to be a Noster ID. So it will be compatible with the entire network. You can take your name and your posts and everything to another Noster app and you own your data. But it's going to have the twist that you can also post optionally to the blockchain. So what's interesting about a blockchain post is not only will it probably outlast your children, but it will have a reach that neither Noster or Blue Sky has. It will actually travel past all boundaries and be visible in all kinds of tools and places where that are completely outside of the Noster and the Blue Sky network. You could probably also sell it if you wanted to, but I don't want to get into that right away. But it will definitely be on the table. One of the only negatives I can see about doing it this way is that Jack Dorsey is a Bitcoin maxi. If you don't know what that is, it's somebody who only likes Bitcoin and doesn't like any other blockchains. And there's no way that I can have people posting to Bitcoin initially because it's super expensive. So the option to post on chain is probably going to use Polygon. And I hope that Jack can understand that that is what we have to work with at first. So follow along if you want to be one of the first users of the app. I could definitely use some beta testers. The initial version is going to be on the web, so anybody can use it, but there will be an Android and an iOS version really shortly after that.